Okay.
Recording in progress.
Shkach. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol nihiyeh b'dvarei.
Amen.
Okay, Likutei Yedidim, good morning. Thank you so much for joining. As we continue with our limud of Likutei Moharan Torah Lamed Ches, a Torah that was said on this week's parsha, this time of year, Shabashira, Markavus Pari V'chil Yer B'Yam, and we continue to see B'siyata D'Shmai with Eitz HaChaim. Today's shir is sponsored by R Yaakov Klein, nishmas, his parents, Revka Breinel, Basvi, Simcha, and Ya'akov, and Yeshayahu, also dedicated as a zechus for refuah sheleimah for Chaim Yehoshua and Chaya Miriam, also dedicated nishmas, Chaim Avrohom Ben, I said yesterday the mother's name. Do you remember the father's name?
Leib.
That's right. Chaim Avrohom Ben Yehudah Leib. The neshama should have an aliyah in the zechus of our learning together. Also, just a super duper exciting announcement. But Be'ezras Hashem will be sending this out more fully a little bit later. But Be'ezras Hashem is Barach, and a huge thank you to Rebbe Yehudah who helped put this together. This coming March 18th to 22nd, over a Shabbos surrounding Rosh Chodesh Nisan, which falls out, is it on Shabbos or Sunday?
No, Wednesday night, Thursday.
Oh, Wednesday night, Thursday. Okay, so we'll be, Be'ezras Hashem, taking a journey centered hopefully around this core chevra. If you're able to join us, and then expanded to those who follow this year on Zoom, those who listen to the recordings, a trip to Ukraine, Be'ezras Hashem, to Uman, B'siyata D'Shmaya, it's a big Indian to go to Uman on Rosh Chodesh Nisan, around Rosh Chodesh Nisan. It's Rabbi Nachman's birthday, as well as Be'ezras Hashem to Mezhbush and Berdichev. This is the flyer that we'll be sending out a little bit later. So there will be a link with more information, and you can get in touch and inquire and be in touch. But this is hopefully going to be a very, very special opportunity, and a much needed, I think, opportunity, especially for the Chevra here in the morning, every morning learning it, to be able to bring a little bit, and really spend time together by the Tzaddikim and traveling and
Just book flights.
There you go. This is Yehudah. Be like Yehudah. Okay? Amazing. So really looking forward to that announcement and having a really special journey with all of you. I hope we'll be able to join us. Okay. Says the Heilige Zisa Rebbe, Torah Lamed Ches, Oisvav. We learned yesterday that a person who is in the experience of trying to rectify their dibor, their negative dibor about themselves, about others, the bechin of achar dvarim lepesach hatas rovetz, needs in the side of Tefillin shal yad to rise up with the roish dvarcha emes, being the keser of malchus, keser of nukva, activated in a way of authenticity, vulnerability, being able to name the problem and not simply to walk around it, but to be able to really get to a point of vulnerability to say Timeya and not just Einenu Tahira. And then rising up to the Shirish HaGvuras, which is the self rooted in the 5 letters of Mansapach, the 5 letters of the Shem Elokim in the left hand of Zer Anpin, those 5 fingers, is then able to receive a ha'ara, an illumination, where all of a sudden there's an awakening, there's an awareness of self, and there's the beginnings of Busha, right, in the lower self. Once the higher self has begun to be activated, it itself, which is Zer Anpin, is going to receive a ha'ara milamala. That's going to be called Tefillin Shal Rosh. Tefillin Shal Rosh is the bechina of Yira Shamayim. Yira Shamayim, where there's a Yira al Penechem, is a bechina of the Tefillin. Az Tavin Yiras Hashem, we learned Az, when a person's able to climb out of the lower 7, which is the sense of self for self, right? And then through being Boicher B'Toiv, right, being able to identify, I am created as an individual for the purpose of relationship, then being able to sort of shift from the lower 7 aspects of those pairs that we learned in Lamed Zayin, and a person's able to move over to the aspects of the Chachma and the Zikaron and the R and the Adam as opposed to Behema, and then through that's the Zayin, and then through that is able to get to the Aleph. Az Tavin. Then you've accessed the world of Bina, which is Ikar Habriya Begindi Shtemaidinle. There should be a known and the knower, and in that place, Az Tavin. So that leads to Yiras Hashem. Yiras Hashem is the Bechin of Tefillin. V'ro Kalam Ya'aretz Ki Shem Hashem Nikra Alecha V'Yaro Mimeka, which is what we ended off with yesterday. Not that they're going to be afraid of us, right? But that they will have Yiras Shamayim just like us, and will be able to join with us in a universal vision, like Yeshayahu Hanavi tells us that La'asid lavai ki beis tvili yikar l'chala amim, and the whole world will get together, and that like the Asek, like the Rambam says, kala olam, right? The only thing that we'll do, right? People won't work anymore. People won't have to. There will be nothing, and we're like rapidly getting to that period of time. We're living through it. It's super shaykh. We'll see it even in the Bechina of Be'ita, like in our own time. And we hope it'll be Achishenek, can happen any minute. But the natural talich of things, we're living in momentous moments. Not even years or decades, like moments at this point. It's a remarkable thing. Ashreinu. But lo ye'asek kol ha'olam ela l'das Hashem balvad. Everything will be taken care of. AI will do all the job. Artificial intelligence will do everything, and that we need. And so, what will people do? They'll have the opportunity, at least, if we do our job correctly, for everyone to sit and to be masig hasagos and to sit with Yer Shemaim and Busha. Busha being, again, awareness of the higher self, and then the dissonance between the actions of the higher self and the lower self. That's what we finished learning yesterday. Last line of Ois Hey, and let's go back inside. V'yaro mimeka, hainu shenimshach alehem gam yira, where the Umas Oilam are also going to be able to share in our yira as a result of us not being fierce warriors per se, although that might be an important facet also of an am, but ultimately what they see in us is our own busha, is our own yira shemaim, is our own sense of dignity and confidence and contact with the higher part of ourselves, memelev, that wants to inspire them too. The same way when we come into the context into contact with a tzaddik, like the Rebbe said, his yira shemaim gives us a feeling of yira. We walk out a tevach hecher, right? We walk out in touch with that higher part of ourselves. All of Am Yisrael is supposed to be klapa the Umas Olam, the tzaddik, right? That's what we're supposed to be. Right? So what it should be is that any time that a non-Jew comes into contact with a Jew, he should walk away with a little bit more godliness, with a little bit more perspective, with a little bit more consciousness. If all of us knew that, and all of us did that, even actively, right, and not simply passively, but even actively, Gewalt, then we can play a role in the world. Just we've been in exile for 2,000 years, and we feel always on the defense, and we don't even have this concept of like, what do you mean? We're supposed to step actively, into a role, and okay, it could be times are changing. It could be the circumstances today allow us to do things that we just were incapable of doing in the past 2,000 or so years. So let's take a look now at Ois Vav, and again, it's just going to be a reinforcing of many of the themes that we've been already learning, b'siyata d'shmaya, but in very beautiful ways. And I think it'll be interesting to us the way in which a lot of the references that we've already been making outside of the text to Adam and Chava and Gan Eden, like we spoke yesterday, but it wasn't in the text. I was just telling you about hiding. So the Rebbe over here, Mamish, brings them all. If I can trouble you for a chumash, I'd appreciate it. I meant to bring one in. Thank you so much. Says the Rebbe, Schusia Gunaleinu. Oisvav. Moshe Gam Kein Zachal Arat Tefillin. Now Moshe Rabbeinu was also zeicha to the R of Tefillin. And again, like we began this Torah, what do you mean zeicha Arat Tefillin? Moshe wore Tefillin like everybody in Klal Yisrael wore Tefillin. And so again, on a deeper level, yes, there's wearing Tefillin. Thank you so much. And then there's the R of Tefillin. And not everybody's zeicha to the R of Tefillin. A person can wear Tefillin. Tefillin is supposed to be the container for a particularized energy. But a person can wear tefillin their whole life and not necessarily access the ar ha-tefillin which we've been describing. Moshe Rabbeinu was zeicha to the ar of tefillin. K'moshe Kasav Zayar, like it says in the Zohar Kadosh, as a response to post the Chet HaEgel, HaKadosh Baruch Hu was wanting to wipe out the nation. Moshe Rabbeinu intervened. HaKadosh Baruch Hu forgave Klal Yisrael, but Hashem told them, you will no longer wear jewelry all the time that you're in the midbar. You have to take your jewelry off of you. And that's what they did. They took off all of their ornaments, and says the Zohar Kadosh, dat tefillin. Dat tefillin. In other words, Klal Yisrael had been stripped of their. It doesn't mean they didn't wear tefillin. Again, Pneumius, spiritually, they took off their ornaments. Right? They were divested of their ar hatefillin, given what they had done, given what madrigas of disconnection from the higher self they had fallen into. And then the pasuk continues. Moshe yikach es ha'ohel. Moshe Rabbeinu set up the oil mayid michutz lamachana, and that's where HaKadosh Baruch Hu would interact with Moshe Rabbeinu. And the Rebbe says, you know what this means? It means that what Klal Yisrael lost, Moshe Rabbeinu took. Shalakach oisana iris. Moshe Rabbeinu himself was able to receive those iris milashin. How does the Rebbe know that this is a reference to light? It was speaking about a tent. Where does it say that Moshe Rabbeinu had light? Yikach says the Rebbe, yeah, because oihel is connected to the word bihilai. Milashin bihilai neiroi ale roishi. And in this context, bihilai means a flickering flame, a conflagration. Bihilai neiroi Ali Roshi. So Moshe Yikach es ha'ohel means Moshe took that fire as Behilai, right? Oihel, Behilai, right? Moshe Rabbeinu took that flickering light that Klal Yisrael had lost because Vayisnatzlos as Edom, as Edyam. A few psukim later it says, Moshe Yikach es ha'ohel. And then, you know what happened then? The Zehu Kikaran Arpanav. Moshe Rabbeinu's face was full of light when he came back from the oil mayid. He had just spoken to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Karan Arpanav, right, which the early the Christian translators translated as he had a horn, right, and that's why they painted a picture of Moshe Rabbeinu with the horn coming out of his head, right, but it means a ray of light, Karan Arpanav. It says the Rebbe, yeah, it also means a horn. Al Shein Karen Achaz Hayalei b'mitzcha. The Gemara in Chulin tells us that the bull that Adam Rishon brought as a carbon post his life being saved, it was a carbon toida, but it was also carbon chatas, right? It was part of his tshuva. Was a unicorn. Karen Achaz Hayalei b'mitzcha. It had one horn coming out of its metzach, and Zebachin has tefillin. Says the Rebbe, make no mistake, this is a tacit reference to the light of Tefillin. Tefillin is we become unicorns every morning. Karen, we put a Karen, right? It's from a behema, and it sticks right out of our forehead. This is, says the Rebbe, that's what happened to Moshe Rabbeinu. Karan Arpanav. Because the stripping of Klal Yisrael's Tefillin, Vayisnatzlos Edyam, Moshe Rabbeinu took. Moshe Yikach es ha'ohel. Memela, if the Zohar told us that what Klal Yisrael lost was Tefillin, and therefore the light that Moshe took was Tefillin, Memela, Karan Arpana, because he had Tefillin. The Rebbe learns, he reads the code completely differently. Karen ha'oleh b'mitzchay, al shem Karen ha'oleh b'mitzchay. Zebachinas Tefillin, shir b'metzach, which, like we already said, is on the forehead, keneged o metzach isha zoynalach me'anti kalin, which is the opposite of busha that a person is supposed to feel on their face, right? Me'anti kalin. That means that a forehead is metzach. You don't see any change in the person. There's no hisparas. There's no tiferes hagvanim, which is the process of balancing out too much chesed, too much gevura, trying to get to the center, that aspect of riding a bike like we spoke about in the previous days. You know what happened next? It says that they were so afraid to approach him because he had the car. But it says the Rebbe, more. It's more than that. Again, the same thing. Doesn't mean that they were afraid of Moshe Rabbeinu. It means that Moshe Rabbeinu was so activated, illuminated, mamish, with Yer Shemayim and Busha, that Memela, when they came into contact with him, V'yiru, they themselves had Yer Shemayim. You know why? Migesha, say love. Again, mi can mean, right, they were afraid of, but it could also mean they were afraid from. They were afraid from approaching Moshe. The Umas Eilam will be afraid, not of approaching us. They will be afraid on account of approaching us. Me. V'yaru mi Mecca. That was the same drasha the Rebbe used there. The Rebbe uses here. V'yiru mi gesha selav.
Because of embarrassment.
Because of their own, I don't think because of their embarrassment. Again, they're in a state where they've lost touch with their embarrassment. They have no busha. They're on account of empowerment. Because they come into contact with a tzaddik who activates their higher self, they see a demus of what you could be, right? And the tzaddik gives chizuk, and the tzaddik gives encouragement. Memela, now their higher self comes into play. Then they start to think, wow, maybe I really could learn a little bit more than I do. Maybe I really could daven a little bit more kavanah. Maybe I could, you understand? And then comes yira and comes busha. But it's not on account of the tzaddik denigrating them and embarrassing them. Right, meaning we're saying the same thing, but I think it's very important to understand how it works. It's through empowerment. That's the Baal Shem Tov's way. Through empowering them, nemei laviyiru, because they came into contact with someone who's so activated that he lives in a state of busha and yira on account of constant awareness of the highest level that he never even reached. Right? He was like masig that there's a thing called sharanun, but Moshe Rabbeinu is at the ceiling, so to speak, of human potential. Coming into contact with such a person awakens our own awareness of what's possible. And this, just by the way, parenthetically, because it's connected to the shiur I'll be giving in zechus around now, or up to Kuf Pei, or somewhere around that area. I've been giving that shiur for 5 years now. It's only once a week, not every day. So we would be finished a long time ago. But there's a huge stress there again and again and again about how the Rebbe wanted everyone to realize that the madregas that Rabbi Nachman himself reached and explained that he reached and wanted us to know that he reached was not as a zechia min hashamayim. It was not some kind of matana because he was born with a hayach neshama and he was Baran Shal Kedoshim and he was the great grandson of the Baal Shem Tov. He again and again, mamish, went to battle, went to war against this concept, and he again and again expressed that mamish, it was due to his avodas. It was due to his Mesiras Nefesh. He has an neshama like everybody else. He just worked really, really hard. And I think that the reason why he wanted to do that, Reb Nosson says explicitly in a number of places, Shivchei Aran, and we learned from last week, Alam L'Trufa, right, Reb Nosson's letters, and Sichos Aran again and again, is because he didn't want anybody to say, oh, it's not relevant for me. It's only relevant for him. So I just gave a shiur this past week. Why by Breslov there's no miracles? Right? Nobody ever heard any moifsim that Rabbi Nachman did. You have a whole book of Reb Shai L'Karistir and the Baba Sali and all these miracles. Rabbi Nachman, no moifsim. My high. Okay, you'll have to listen to the shiur. Went into the sugya at length. But part of the reason is because the minute that you start creating the demus of some miracle worker, it's totally unrelatable to me. So Seder. So he's like a wizard. And I'm a commoner. I'm a what's it called? A mudblood?
Muggle.
A muggle. So what's mudblood? Muggle? Huh? What's mudblood then? Anyway, not relevant. Muggle. But muggle means, right? I'm a muggle. He's Dumbledore. And zeo. So the Rebbe said, we're not talking about Maifsim. We're not doing Maifsim. We're not talking about Maifsim. There's Torah to learn. There's Hashem to serve. There's everybody can be better. And the Rebbe said, mamish, extreme statements which are hard to imagine. He said, follow my advice and you'll become a tzaddik kamoini mamish. Period. You'll become Rabbi Nachman. You'll become. That's what he said. Hard to believe, or hard to imagine. Sipur Maisius Likutei Moharan, there was only been one ever, right? Even with so many thousands and hundreds of thousands of people following his advice very closely. But this was the point he was trying to make. The Tzaddik empowers, Moshe Rabbeinu empowers. Memela, he brings it back into our awareness of what I think that's the key point. I can change. I think so many people, they don't change. Even Chevra, we're sitting in this room, right? We've been learning for a year. We have to think in our lives, how have we changed? Has our davening changed? Davening is really important. Has our davening changed? Does the way that we approach davening change? Right? The awareness that just because I did something yesterday, that doesn't mean that I have to do it today, is a huge awakening. Most of the reason why we stay the same is because after a certain sort of cementing or solidification of our lifestyle, behavior, routine, that's just what we do. And I think that even coming to learn, or anybody who's listening to the recordings, it's a huge accomplishment, to do something consistently every single day. Again, like we said when we got together for the year anniversary is major, and it's true. But within that, and I've seen some of us really are taking to that, and some at least bachot as far as I know. But I'm saying for all of us and myself, within that, we learned about so many practical avodas. How many of them did we onboard, and how many of them we were speaking to Yehudah the other day. But there's so much. What do you take? But whatever we do take, on a practical, and that's the Rebbe's thing. I'm talking about on a uvdela maisa. Like, have we instituted as both of this every day? Have we, have we learned about that? Have we go back to the stream of consciousness document? How many is like 180 practical things that we learned in terms of like the eitzes that come out? Like, just the awareness, I can grow, I can be actively working on things to implement kifi what I'm capable of, right? Every person has limited bandwidth. All of us are trying to make parnasa. We're trying to be, husbands and fathers, and life is, and all of that is avodas Hashem in the highest madrega. And that's maybe even priority from the standpoint of, a person has to work all this stuff out. What am I running away from? What am I running toward? What's really right for me in this moment? So life is complicated, but within the realm of what we are able to work on, the awareness that I can grow, that I can become a tzaddik, that's what the Rebbe is offering you. So there's nothing holding you back. There's nothing in the way. So what is in the way? That we don't really look at ourselves honestly. We don't take the time to actually make an assessment of we'll use davening as example. So what does my davening look like? What is my attitude toward it? What would it look like to take my davening to the next level? That kind of thing. The reason we don't do that is because our dibor is already in pagam of achar dvar. So it isn't that like I'm negative about my davening. It's just I don't think about it. I don't look at it. I don't think about it. Being free from that is recognizing the problem, right? Being able to analyze and say, maybe there's something to work on here. And then within, like we said, the empowerment of knowing that I'm not recognizing that in order to beat myself up. That's counterproductive. That's not the point. I'm recognizing that to say, Gewalt, what a privilege. The Tzaddik showing me, the gates are wide open. Like who was it? Rav Elazar ben Dudaya, right? Ein adavar tali elabi. I'm sitting here waiting around for something else to happen in my life. Ein adavar tali elabi. And I think that's, again, just to stress this point because it's so important when we speak about the need for practicality. One of the genius things about Breslov is that while there is the mahalach sometimes of working things through emotionally and going to this therapy and that therapy, all of which I'm a big fan of and proponent of, it can be very helpful. In Breslov, it's just like, here, we're going to prescribe you a bunch of different things. Just do them, okay? Do them. It doesn't need to be so deep. Go to the mikveh, as much as you can. It's just a very practical thing. Do that. Again, it doesn't require that much inner work, no matter what your mood is, doesn't matter. Do these things, the Rebbe said, and you'll become a tzaddik. That's it. Almost like below yoidim, like all you don't even realize, because you're doing the things that tzaddik does. Like it's like the Turkey prince, like we spoke about when we got together. Before you know it, but you have to do the things. How much can a person onboard at this stage and which of the things? Every person's going to have to go through that process. But coming into contact with Moshe Rabbeinu means, wow. Not. Oh, look at Moshe Rabbeinu. What a tzaddik. It's, I'm Moshe Rabbeinu. I could be the same like him. That's the empowerment. Memela, there's busha. So all of a sudden your higher self comes into context, and then I start comparing where I am at with where I want to be, and then there's tikkun. But again, it has to come in the context of empowerment, love. We called that sheyodea mi v'roya pchisusai ugedulas habayri. That's how we learned about, right? Falling off the bike. Gewalt. Amazing, right? Amazing. But the Rebbe wants us to grow. How much to grow? Identifiably. Okay. So then, v'yiru migeshes elav. Ki he'ir aleihem hayira. Same thing what the Rebbe said about the Umas Ha'ilim. Kamay shekasav az tavin yiras Hashem. And this is what Chazal tell us. A person who does an avera and feels busha about it, he's immediately forgiven. My high, what's pshat? Says the Chayzim Lublin famously, the Yetzer Hara doesn't want you to do an avera. The Yetzer Hara wants you to do an avera so that you fall into yish. That's what the Yetzer Hara wants. The way I once described it is sinning Sin, I mean, there is said for many tzaddikim, but sinning is getting caught in the spider's web, which is bad enough. But that's not the tachlis of the web. Despairing is getting eaten by the spider. Right? That's the sin is so that it can catch you in the web. What does he want to? But you're still alive. You know what I'm saying? So you can fight your way free. Wow, strange dream last night. Actually, I was just thinking now about a bird. That was very strange. That was really interesting. Actually, I have to think about that. Remind me about that because I'll forget it. The bird. Giving up is getting eaten by the spider. Memela. If a person does an avera and then there's busha afterwards, you're still in safe territory. In other words, you're in touch enough with your higher self, where, put it in other terminology, they say this also from the Alter Rebbe and also from Rabbi Nachman, similar thing. They say from both of them that these tzaddikim were reported to have said, and again, it's a very delicate sentiment, you have to be careful, that the Rebbe said, I took the venom out of the bite of the snake. The snake will still bite, but there's no venom anymore. Right? And this is seen as a reference to these two stages, right? The snake's bite is the avera. What kills you, though, is the yish. The tzaddikim said, you follow our path, the snake will bite. Humans are humans. There's no venom. Right away, you bounce back. Right away. Rabbi Nachman said about himself, he said, even if I were to do the biggest avera in the world, there would be no change. Because I'll just do tshuva the next minute. This was seen as terrible heresy. So imagine like any other tzaddik saying such a thing. It's absurd, right? Imagine Chaim Yehoshua saying, I could do the biggest avera in the world. It's a big deal. I'll do tshuva. What did he mean? But again, like everything in Rabbi Nachman, it has to be understood in the context of all of Rabbi Nachman. What he was trying to say is that he is so davuk. We spoke about davuk to Hashem, to his higher self, to an energy of tshuva, constantly in touch with who he really is, that it's possible he'll fall into an avera. He's human. He's not pretending not to be human. He's human. The Rebbe was the most human of all the tzaddikim. He made him say, he wanted us to know he was human. But he's so rooted in Ein Shemiyash that nothing can knock him down. He'll fall. We'll get right back up. The snake will bite. There's no venom anymore. Chasidus, there's no venom anymore. Now, part of the challenge and the fear of the misnagdim is that because if the snake bite doesn't have venom anymore, then it's not so scary, right? And then all of a sudden you sort of lessened the sense of severity, and that's why again a person can't just cherry pick different sources out of Chasidus and then build their whole worldview on that. Once a person has that sentiment within the context of everything else that we're learning, and a heart that genuinely is inflamed authentically to not want the guf, not because I can't, but because I don't want it and I want dvekus, then you have a healthy, what's it called? Like a real estate portfolio, right? You have like a healthy portfolio. Things are balanced, right? You have like some of your money in gold, some of your money in silver. So you have to have all of it. Otherwise, it's not healthy. Like anything is not healthy. If you have too much of one thing, it's not healthy. If you have too much of the other thing, it's not healthy. Somebody sent me a video yesterday going around. Somebody made a spoof of all the Thank You Hashem songs. And basically, it's very funny actually, created like some AI, because once they're making AI videos, now anybody can make an AI video, and you don't even have to compose songs anymore because you could just have AI compose your song. So now, anybody and his brother can make a whole Thank You Hashem movement now. So this guy made a song basically spoofing all of the Thank You Hashem songs. And the point was, if you want to be a real Yid, like you can fly in the carpet with the Baba Sali, you can ride in the back of the wagon with the Baal Shem, you can fabring with your horse, and you can like all the shiot, right? And he says, but bottom line at the chorus is, if you want to be a real Yid, open a Shulchan Aruch like your Zayda did, and that's his thing, Messiah, or I think the ultimate thing is, it won't help you on the Yom HaDin. Like that's the, okay, right? Who's right? He's also right, but they're also right. If you only have that, Okay, I don't know about farbinging with horses, but if you only have that, but you don't have connection to tzaddikim, and you don't have the camaraderie, and you don't have, the panemius that they're making fun of in the song, so it's so interesting. Just for me, I'll just reflect, on a personal level, like this kind of thing a few years ago would have made me angry. Like I would have been ice mensch for a week. I would have been writing articles and Baruch Hashem, I feel like I'm just proud of myself. Like I say, on a personal level, like I've gotten to a point where I'm saying, like I can watch that and see the emes in it and say, they're right and they're right, and you need both, and elu ve'elu. Okay, I might not agree with the presentation, and I like things that are presented in a balanced way. But the truth is, again, you need a full portfolio. They're right. You also need Shulchan Aruch. You need the Gemara. You need the Messiah. You need the, and both are true. And this is the dialectic in Am Yisrael, where you have one, force, that's the force of Gvura, it's Tamid Kacha. Then you have a Chasidim, which is Chesed, and trying to push the thing forward. And you need this balance. You need this dialectic. And so we need to see this teaching from Rabbeinu HaKadosh in the general context. Then it becomes less dangerous and much more empowering. Once a person genuinely feels this sense of commitment, this sense of a yearning to be close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and also they're human, so in Tzaddik Bar, so they have to also know that in Shemi Yishbadam Klal, and that whenever along that journey a person by mistake slips and you fall into the spider web, says the Rebbe, the next minute I'll do tshuva. It won't matter. If this is what the ultimate fear of an Avera is, that it will cause a person to fall into a consciousness of Yush, says the Gemara, if a person does an Avera and then is boish, then moichlomai. Right? Because again, it's the same idea. It doesn't make such a deep cut. It's a surface, it's a flesh wound, it's a scar. Didn't go in. V'haraya, you were boish. You were boish, you're still in the parsha. If a person gets to a point, kivan the avar v'shana, right, the Gemara says, then nasole keheter, meaning the minute that a person stops caring, then it's not pasha. Then it's not pasha. And again, the not caring is an expression of one of the two forms of the despair/depression that we spoke about. Because one of the aspects of depression is that a person cares so much that they just become debilitated, right? Which is also not good, right? That's the other side of it. But the side that we've been speaking about here is Efkeris. It's Efkeris. It just stops meaning. I stop becoming boish over it. Whoa. Stop becoming boish over it. That means, if you understand what bush is, that I've fallen so out of touch with that higher sense of self that I no longer feel bad about the fact that I am not meeting my standard or my ideal, because it's no longer my standard, no longer my ideal. Okay? That's the Rebbe says. This is a deeper understanding of the Gemara in Brachas Yud Beis Amud Beis. Ha'oivra avera umis ba'yishbai moichlin lemiyat. Ki avera machnes ba'adam ruach shtus. What does the avera want to do? It wants to put into us the ruach shtus. How did we interpret the ruach shtus yesterday in Breslov? What does ruach shtus mean? Scared of the mouse, right? She'eni yodea mikoichai. Feeling powerless, feeling like a shmata. That's what the Avera wants to do. In other words, it isn't just getting caught in the web, it's getting eaten by the spider. Busha actively counteracts this experience of ruach shtus by giving myself the strength to know, no, I still feel busha. That means I'm embarrassed about what I did. I'm in touch with the higher part. This is not who I want. I'm still anchored and tethered above, as opposed to being dragged down below. Kamaisha Kasa, like we said, Az Tavin, Yiras Hashem. Then Yiras Hashem is Moichin, is Tavin. It gives me access to the world of consciousness of Bina. And this is Chazal said the Gemara in the Nedarim, Mishiyesh by Azos. The Adua Shalei Amdu Ragle Avois of Al Har Sinai. Mishi Yeshlei Azos, a person who has Azos Panim. In other words, excuse me, they've lost touch with their busha. The Adua Shalei Amdu Ragle Avois of Al Har Sinai. Their forefathers didn't stand on Har Sinai. Now, the Rebbe doesn't really explain this. Oh, no, I'm sorry. He does. He does later on in a slightly different context. Let me just give a little bit of a peerage to this now. Okay, taken on a face value, it just means that he's lost touch with Yiddishkeit, right? Meaning, if you take it out of the specificity of his forefathers didn't stand at Mount Sinai, it means that a person who has Azaz Panim, right? They don't feel busha. They're disconnected. They need to be elevated. But on a much deeper level, what did we learn about Raglayim? We already had Raglayim, right? Because we said the pasuk, Ayimdais Hayu Ragleinu B'Sharayich Yerushalayim. What do we say about Regel there? Regel was connected to Tzaddik. What was Tzaddik connected to? Dibor, right? Tzaddik was connected to Dibor, and then we said Ayimdais Hayu Ragleinu was an aliyah for Dibor B'Sharayich Yerushalayim on account of connecting to Torah that can keep us sustained even in the Laila, right? Remember, that's what we learned there. So we hear. And then we said, what's the aspect of pe'er with tefillin? Why is tefillin called pe'er? What's pe'er? Klalius hagvanim, right? It's the awakening of all the colors. Which colors? The three fundamental colors, right? Red, blue, green, right? It's the bechina of chesed, well, not in that order, but chesed, gvur, tiferes. And that's awakened in a person's life. We spoke about stability. We spoke about structure, order, a person working toward a project as opposed to just hefkerus, which is chaos. And that experience of trying to find the balance, right, on account of going too much to the side of Avrohom, too much to the side of Yitzchak, and then ultimately finding the balance somewhere in the middle. So if you take all of those elements and you plug it back into this context, it's perfect. Mi sheyesh le'azus panim biyadua shaloi amdu ragle avoisav al har Sinai. The avoisav could be seen here as a reference to the Avos HaKadoshim, that system of balance. Raglav is a bechina of dibor. Amdu means the same thing it meant when we said Ayim Dos Hayu Ragleinu, means having an aliyah. So biadua shaloi amdu ragle avoisav. You can see here that the dibor did not have an aliyah on account of the Avos HaKadoshim al har Sinai. Right, which is a symbol for humility and busha. So the Rebbe now starts to speak about Adam Rishon. And he's going to get back to this line about Raglayim toward the end of this paragraph. But let's see what he says. Says the Rebbe, Ki Adam Rishon pagam b'bechinas Tefillin. It wasn't just Klal Yisrael after the Chetei Egel that were pagim in Tefillin. Adam was pagim in Tefillin. Why? Because the Chet of Klal Yisrael at the Egel was collectively a reenactment of what Adam and Chava did on a personal level. The same thing. How do I know? Because what did the pegam of the Cheta Eitz Hadas cause? It caused for there to be zuama, right? For there to be, we spoke about the venom of the snake, kipshutai, right? Sent into all of humankind. When we stood at Har Sinai, paska zuamasim, it went away. Cheta Egel, it came back, right? That means to say that there's a deep correlation between these two experiences in biblical history and in the story of our holy nation. Okay. Memela, if Klal Yisrael after the Chetei Egel we learned lost touch with the R of Tefillin, which is everything we've been speaking about, so certainly Adam also was pagim in Tefillin. Ki Adam Rishon pagim b'bechinas Tefillin she'im bechinas Eitz HaChaim, where the inyan of the Tefillin is Eitz HaChaim. What's the inyan of Eitz HaChaim? Va'atem hadveikim b'Hashem Elokeichem chayim kulchem. Chayim means dveikus and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Dveikus, we said, is tefillin. Dveikus is the right. Tefillin are the symbol for dveikus. She'im b'chinas Eitz HaChaim k'may shekasav Hashem aleihem yichyu. The Gemara, the pasuk in Yeshayahu says, and Hashem will live right upon you. And the Gemara darshans this to mean tefillin. Hashem aleihem. What does it mean? Hashem was on them, just like the pasuk earlier, right? Kishem Hashem nikra alecha. Same thing, right? Alecha means tefillin. Tefillin are put on, right? Pe'ercha chabash alecha. That same word alecha always is a reference to tefillin, which are placed upon us. Yichyu is connected to tefillin. I said also dveikus is connected to chayim. And the pasuk makes a direct connection between chiyas and tefillin. See, he let go of the Eitz HaChaim, which is that consciousness of life, which is that consciousness of balance, which is that consciousness of tefillin. Yeah, that's what the Eitz HaChaim means. It's a symbol. It's a metaphor. The Eitz HaChaim is in all of our lives. The possibility of living with zechus, the possibility of living with the consciousness of Torah, Lamed Ches. Torah Lamed Ches is really everything. I said yesterday at the end of the year, Torah Lamed Ches is the whole thing. Really. Really. Because this is what it's all about. It's all about zechus. It is all about zechus. So many of the concepts that we've been learning about are so useful and helpful, and they all help. But when I come down to it, why am I on this planet? The answer is zechus. I'm trying to build to become davuk in Hashem. What does it mean to be davuk in Hashem? The ups and the downs. How am I davuk to Hashem in the downs? I'm falling into a sense of self, and look how limited I am, and look, I should give up. No, you shouldn't give up. Why shouldn't you give up? Go back to Torah Lamed Vav. It's a process of labor, right? Oh, but I still experience my sense of self, the good and the bad. Yeah, Torah Lamed Zayin. You need these three Torahs. These three Torahs really together, right? Lamed Vav, Lamed Zayin, Lamed Ches. No, because you're supposed to climb out of that sense of self while maintaining that sense of self, to bring it, all of it, the good, the bad, the ugly, into contact with the Kodesh Baruch Hu. And to use that as grist for the mill, so to speak, for his spodidus. Then you have what to talk to Hashem about. I can talk to Hashem, but I'm so low. Yeah, what do you mean? So this is what you should talk to Hashem about. Kodesh Baruch Hu gave you an opportunity to connect to him. Yeah, but Adam and Chava ran away in Gan Eden. They hid. If they shouldn't have. It was a mistake. Ayaka Hashem called out. Torah Lamed Ches fixes our whole moichin. I still have contact with my higher self? You bet you do. Of course you do. It's just you don't realize it. Tefillin shel yad, tefillin shel rosh. I'm a yid again. Wow. Right? Lamed Ches brings me back to life. Dveikus. That's what the Eitz HaChaim means. Adam and Chava let go of the Eitz HaChaim means they fall into the world of the Eitz Hadas Toiv V'Ra. Eitz Hadas Toiv V'Ra essentially means, in addition to millions of other things, it means a tree of imbalance. Eitz HaChaim is mamish, the balance. The Nekuda Elyoina, which is the Nekuda Tachtoina, the Keser, which is Chachma and Bina at the same time. We called it Yom Ashalu Hu Lo Yom Lo Laila. Right? That thing that we can't express, but it comes down to us in a gift from beyond. Eitz Hadas Toiv V'Ra is super black and white. You're either Toiv or you're Ra. If you're Toiv, you're Toiv, and if you're Ra, you're Ra. And that's it. You're either close to Hashem or you're not close to Hashem. You're either Davuk or you're not Davuk. And if you're not Davuk, you're not Davuk. Right? That's the consciousness of the Eitz Hadas Toiv V'Ra. That's why I said yesterday, it wasn't simply Yehudah made a clip out of it, which I'm deeply appreciative of. Baruch Hashem, a lot of people had hanaf from it and gained from it, so that's in your zechus. It isn't simply, they ate from the Eitz Hadas Toiv V'Ra and they ran away. It's because they ate from the Eitz Hadas Toiv V'Ra that caused them to think, now I'm Ra. So there's no Eitz HaChaim of, but the Ra itself is from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Ra itself, now feel the busha authentically. We spoke in Zechus Tzaddik, right? Now go ahead and do tshuva. Now bring it back into spodus. They didn't have that Torah. All they had was nigla. They didn't have nister. Nister is the Eitz HaChaim. And on the level of nigla, state in Shulchan Aruch, this goes back to what I was saying before, I think, about, if all you have is Shulchan Aruch, it's extremely, there's no place for struggle and complexity and difficulty and a lack of emunah and the ugly stuff. And that's nister. Because on the level of nikla, again, we spoke about masks. Everybody shows up with their mask, right? And this one keeps Shulchan Aruch and that one keeps Shulchan. This one keeps it more, this one keeps it less. But that doesn't get into the kishkas of the mensch. Pnimius does. Pnimius deals with that part of us. And I think, again, that's why our dar is so desperately thirsty for Pnimius, because for the first time in Jewish history, we have a little bit of breathing room. Now, Lachatz is coming again. Hashem should protect all of us. But there's a little bit of breathing room to be able to go beyond the surface and to feel like, okay, we have steady, sort of, we have the outside, and it's pretty steady. Baruch Hashem, we have our institutions, we have our... But now, what's been going on in the Pnimius, my goodness, we're falling apart. In the Pnimius, we're falling apart. So we have to go now, and we're desperate for the world of Pnimius. That deals with that stuff. That Torah that's a Torah of Ein Oidem Al Vadai is the Torah that's telling me that even when I fall into the Ra, the Eitz Hadas Tov Ra, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is there too. That's called Baki B'Shayv. I mean, this is revelatory. It's life-changing. It's life-changing. This is why, just to say again, I have this crazy experience. I wish I didn't, but I do, where I go into schools, and I mean, some of your children are in the classes, right? The magic that happens in those rooms is like, you wouldn't believe it. And I should walk out of there feeling so ecstatic and so grateful to Hashem, which I do. There's a part of me that does. But you know what I mostly feel? Is that I really feel sad because there are 800 kids in Hasmo Boys. How many am I teaching? 20? Like, how many are going to get this ever? So it devastates me. Because the ones, Baruch Hashem, that I'm able to reach, who are shaykh to it at this stage, again, not everybody has to be, but the kids who are ready for it, or are mature enough, or are bright enough, who are at the right time in their life. That's also part of hashgacha. Some people, it's not the right time in their life, and they can't force it. But those kids, I mean, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. They're different. They're categorically now, they're different. What they understand, what they know. But there's so much we're not doing, and who doesn't need this? How could a person go through life without this? What was our Yiddishkeit before this? Okay. Adam Arishan, let's go, last few minutes, let's go of the Eitz HaChaim, and he connects himself to the Eitz Hadas Tovara, the Dibek Es Atzmai, what's called Be'ilana de Moisa, the tree of definitive death. In other words, the tree of Yush Gesundheit Stark, that when a person dies, they die. There's nothing as definitive, right? And it doesn't mean just physical death, spiritual death. Guess what happened then? So then he was cast out of Gan Eden. Because the mission obviously says, Ki azus panim legehenim. Meaning again, it's not a punishment. You're an az panim, straight to hell with you. That's not what it means. It means a person who has lost touch with their busha, spiritually speaking, they're in purgatory. But it's not an objective thing, right? Where as a result of the fact that you are such a Rasha, that you're an Azpanim, you have to go to Gehenna. You're sent to Gehenna and as a punishment. That's how most people learn these things. It's horrible.
Black and white.
It's mamish, and that because that's what it seems to say. But of course that's not what it says. How do we know what the Torah says? We had Tzaddikim who told us what the Torah says. That's how. Otherwise, how do we know anything, right? But there are Tzaddikim in the world. There are Tzaddikim through their lens. The whole Torah is mashu acher. Now we're learning it's not an objective punishment, it's a subjective experience. If subjectively I no longer feel busha and I'm an aspanim, memela I'm in Gehenim. But a person who has busha, they're still in Gan Eden. Adam and Chava lost this sense of busha. They became aspanim. So Vaigarish Hashem in Gan Eden. And then when Adam Rishon does tshuva, what does it say? HaKadosh Baruch Hu created for them kasnas are garments of skin. Says the Zohar Kadosh, what's the garment of skin? Da Tefillin. Hashem made for them Tefillin. Tefillin for Adam and Chava, yeah, because in this context Chava is the nukva. She wears Tefillin shel yad. Adam is their ampin. He wears Tefillin shel rosh. My friends, you can learn Parshas Bereishis your whole life. And how many lines did we just read? 4? And it changes everything. Tefillin. V'zeh pirish memela shar shehikr Adam Rishon. When Adam Rishon then brings a shar, karen ha'isol b'mitzchay. Then of course it's going to have a karen in his metzach. Why? What's a carbon? Go back to Torah Lamed Zayin. Carbon means shechting the Bahamias. Shechting the lower part of myself. How do I shech the lower part of myself? With the R of Tefillin. Memela, I'm able to bring my behema and I'm able to elevate it. My behema is not definitively a behema. That's the Ilana de Moisa. That's the tree of Eitz Hadas Ra. Karen Haisale b'mitzchay, like Moshe Rabbeinu. Kehal Yedidim karban, ainu Yedidim tshuva, zachal b'chinas Tefillin. He was zechus to Tefillin sheb'chinas kerum ar apanim. Kerun, right? Ar apanim, the illumination of the light of his face. And I'm going to be mitzamtzim, and I'm going to end here. despite that being very hard for me. I want to give a few minutes before davening. Be'ezras Hashem, we will continue tomorrow. Doesn't look like we're going to be able to finish the Torah before Shabbos. There's still a lot to do. It's a very, very rich Torah. But Ashrenu. We're saying it before next month. You're saying that. Okay. Yehudah, thank you so much for joining. Have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful day. Ashrenu. Chaim.
אני הבן ואתה האב שלי שכל כך אוהב אותי האב שלי מלך חי וקיים על כל נשימה שאני